We welcome back to Houston Sports Talk Greg Lucas, and I'm sure our listeners know him from his nearly 3 decades working with the Astros and the Rockets telecasts on Fox Sports and the various regional networks. And great to have you back with us, Greg. And I know you've been calling a few of the Sugar Land Skeeters games, and I guess between T-Mac, Roger Clemens, Scott Kazmir, and Jason Lane, you might start calling Constellation Field the Fountain of Youth.
Well, it has been for some guys. This year's team is a little bit older. They've had some pitchers that have, during the course of the year, have been signed by what they call affiliated teams. They don't call them minor league teams because in reality so are the Skeeters, but affiliated teams affiliated with major league organizations. So they've lost 3 or 4 pitchers and I think 1 outfielder during the course of the year. But Gary Gaetti, who's the manager, he has a lot of connections, and so when he needs new players, he's able to pick them up. The roster has been pretty stable, though, other than a few pitchers, and the pitchers that have filled in have done a great job. This team has a very good pitching staff. They really get the job with pitching and defense. They do not have a great hitting team, and certainly don't have a whole lot of power, but they have really good pitching and really good defense, and they've been playing very well since just the end of the first half of the season.
And those games are on ESPN or ESPN3, is that right?
They're on ESPN3. The home games are on ESPN3. Ira Liebman is the voice of the Skeeters, and he does every game, including the road games, which are on a local station website in Sugar Land. Those are radio only. The home games are broadcast as television because they are on ESPN3, which you can access through the ESPN website. They're available really all over the world, for that matter. Ira does the majority of the play-by-play, and then Brett Dolan, of course, former Astro radio man, does the middle 3 innings and analysis on about 70% of the games, and I work about 30 of the games, and it's 30% of the games, and essentially the games that Brett's not available for, so 20 to 30 before the season's over.
Well, baseball's Sabre convention was in Houston last week, and I know you had a chance to partake. What was that like?
It was very, very, very outstanding. I was very fortunate to get to moderate one of the panel discussions, and it was the one in which we invited people who were involved with the Colt 45s back. And I was very happy that I was able to acquire Bob Aspromonte and Hal Smith and Carl Warwick and Jimmy Wynn and Mickey Herskowitz, who, of course, was a writer covering the team in the formative years. They were all on the panel, and they did a great job. We did an hour with the fans. We probably had 400 or 500 fans in the room, and it was the first of the panels. And I think that the players were all gratified because this is total volunteer. There's no money changing hands here, and the people in Houston did a great job, and I'm talking about the Astros people, the Skeeters people, in helping support this operation because there is no money available from Sabre to actually pay for guests to come in. Some cities have a tough time bringing in relatively significant people. And I was real happy on the Colt 45 group because we had a lot of people that wanted autographs after the game and had after the presentation, a lot of questions. And in other panels, Reed Ryan was involved, Larry Durker was involved. There were others with the organization. In fact, they had a panel from Minute Maid Park that had the general manager and some of his other decision science guys to talk. And really great support from the Astros, great support from the Skeeters, who hosted the group out at a game one night, and Hal Smith went through the whole story of Sugar Land Skeeter baseball, and just great support from Houston. And next year's convention in Chicago has something to strive for because everyone really loved the job done by the organizing committee here in Houston.
Well, I'm sure the Astros had to be a little bit of the talk about what they're doing these days, and I'm curious as to what kind of feedback you had about them at the Sabre convention, especially with their recent trade and then, of course, the Brady Aiken debacle and everything that's happened with them in the last year or last couple of years.
Well, I think the recent trade probably had the most curious questioning because giving up a young pitcher who looks like he might be in the right direction was sort of curious to a lot of people on a team that is trying to build. I think the Cozart part of the trade was the most interesting. Now, Keke Hernandez is very popular, but admittedly, he's probably in the big picture a utility guy when you finally get your main team together. But it was curious with a lot of the people. They wondered exactly what was going in the thinking in both of those cases. But I think generally the people that are from out of town think the Astros are at least heading in the right direction. I think there's no consensus as to exactly how soon they will get there or if they will fully get there, but they are definitely heading in the right direction. I think that's pretty much consensus.
Well, what's your feeling as to how they're doing these days? This past week, they got swept by the Phillies, which was a big setback, but then they came back. They won 2 out of 3 against the Rangers, and they seem to be owning the Rangers this year. Hard to believe, but the Rangers look like a much worse team than the Astros right now.
Well, they are. They've had a lot of injuries, but there's an interesting situation there because they're having to play a lot of their young guys, and some of their young guys just aren't getting it done. Well, that sounds familiar because some of the Astros young guys are not getting it done. They're giving them a lot of rope, especially a couple of the outfielders. They're getting a lot of rope to see, and maybe even a couple of infield positions. They're getting a lot of opportunities. And so if they don't make it, it's going to be their own fault. It's not going to be a question of they gave them a 2-game stint and they didn't get any hits and so they sent them back. They're getting chances. The Astros, I think, most encouraging. Their pitching has been better, especially starting pitching. Still not giving them quite enough innings, but when they're in there, they're doing fine for the most part. Some of the bullpen, iffy, but that is not uncommon in baseball. Bullpens are important, but they also are usually the lowest paid players on the regular staff. So that's not too unusual. I think we've got to get, there's Castro needs to hit as he did last year. Singleton needs to finally turn the corner and show that he's an everyday big leaguer, because right now he's getting a chance, and he's not an everyday big leaguer on a team that's going to win yet. It's too bad that Springer's been out because he was starting to have a few more games in which he didn't have any strikeouts, or maybe very few, and that's going to be the key for him. But in general, I'm happy with the team, but next year it has to be way better than this, or they're going to be in trouble financially with their fan support, because you saw the attendance for the Rangers series, and that's supposedly, quote unquote, our big rival, and there were an awful lot of empty seats, and that will get worse if the team doesn't start getting better.
Well, the one really good news this week for the Astros was the possible end to the CSN Houston debacle, and many of us finally might get to watch games beginning next year for the Astros, actually this year for the Rockets this coming season. What are your thoughts, and how long do you think it'll take to repair that relationship with the fans who've been left in the dark these past couple of seasons?
When you break habits, it's sometimes hard to start them again, and that's the situation. There was a habit of watching the game or checking in on the game or occasionally going to a game, and that's been broken over these last 2 years. It'll be tough, but you know what? It all goes back to winning. If this team does, in fact, start to turn the corner a little bit, we're going to forget a lot about the fact they're in the wrong league, or that they're playing teams that nobody knows much about because they haven't been following them. Winning solves a lot of stuff, and if they start winning, that will solve a lot. Now, I will say this, from what I have read of the potential takeover by the Root Network, which of course is owned by DirecTV and AT&T, which are about to merge as it is, but right now they're separate. I think that would be a good move for the fans. I cannot speak for every single person that employed over at CSN, that, of course, I know a bunch of them. I don't know what effect that's going to have on them, because do they do as much studio work? Do they want the same people? Do they want as many people? Will there be automatic switchovers? Just as when Fox disappeared, that was the same thing. There were a lot of them went over, but not everybody. And so that would be sort of a similar situation. I always feel for anybody in this business when they have to look for work. It isn't going to affect the guys who run the cameras or direct or produce or any of that stuff, because those people are working really for the production company as freelancers, and it's the full-time people that I'd be most concerned with. And I really hope that all works out, but I also hope the games get back on where more people can watch them. They'll obviously still be on CSN. They just be on a channel, and because they have a contract, but they'd also be on DirecTV and hopefully the other systems, and hopefully working out some kind of a deal out in the States as far as the Astros are concerned, so that they can get back into San Antonio and Austin and Corpus Christi and places like that.
Well, great to have you on with us again, Greg. You can check Greg on Twitter at Greg C. Lucas, and listen to him do an occasional Sugarland Skeeters game. Thanks so much for coming on with us again, Greg, and great to catch up with you as always.
I'm happy to be with you. As you notice, we did not mention my book. We did it last time, and we didn't mention it. It's just this close. It's been printed. It's just this close, and I promise I'll be back on, and we'll tell you all about it and how to get it when the time is right. Hey, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, we'll definitely be talking about that book soon. Thanks a lot, Greg. You can listen to more of our interviews and podcast on HoustonSportsTalk.net. Subscribe to Houston Sports Talk for free on iTunes or on the Stitcher app.